Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
History has been made. It took Ireland 109 years to beat New Zealand in international rugby. We now have 4 victories since 2016. This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. We have beaten New Zealand for the first ever time on New Zealand soil. Ireland have won the second test by 23 points to 12 in Dunedin. Andrew Porter scored an early try. New Zealand were totally undisciplined in the first half. They were given 2 yellow cards before Angus Tavo was sent off. Beauden Barrett's try cut the gap to 10-7 at the break for Ireland. James Ryan was in the bin for the early stage of the second half, but Ireland completely dominated the game in the second half, and Andrew Porter scored his second try, his 4th international try, on 49 minutes. Johnny Sexton kicked the conversion of further 2 penalties to give Ireland the cushion for a famous win. Will Jordan with a consolation try for the All Blacks. Sexton hobbled off towards the end. We'll see how he is. So the series tied at 1 game apiece now, 1 win apiece going into the decider in Wellington next Saturday morning. Let's go to the other side of the world and speak to the former Irish international Alan Quinlan. Quinny, yes, what a day.
Unbelievable, John. Yeah, it was incredible. I think it was pretty chaotic in that first half. The yellow card and Fainga Nuku, first of all, could have been a red. Then the Tuunga Fassi got a yellow carded, and then you had Angus Tavo getting the red card. And Ireland were brilliant. I think they started the game so well. Andrew Porter's first try, the penalty from Sexton. I think they were in a great position. And when they had that numerical advantage, you thought they were going to kick on. New Zealand defended incredibly well, and unbelievably, they go up the field and they score a try from Beauden Barrett just before half time, and you think it's a big psychological blow, but Ireland were just immense what they did in the second half. The start of that second half, James Ryan was in the bin, and 14 men apiece. Andrew Porter gets his second try. I just thought it's incredible. It's surreal here. Players have just gone off the field. Some of the New Zealand players are out doing fitness, the extra squad players and some of the bench. And there was just an eerie silence throughout that second half. And Ireland were just fantastic. They produced one of probably the greatest ever victory for Ireland, because they've never won here. And the Irish people are singing afterwards. Came together, the players stayed down on the field for a little while. We just had that feel of something really special. Who knows what's going to happen next week? There'll probably be an angry reaction, but we've got to enjoy this now. And these players, I just was thinking their CVs are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's so many of these guys who won 4 times now against New Zealand. I think obviously the CV is the World Cups have been disappointing for Ireland, but here and now, this is just a really, really, really big win for Ireland.
I'm thinking, Quinny, of all the tours back to 1976 and the amateur tours, and Dunedin is like in the South Island. It's very near the Antarctic. It really is the other side of the world. It's the end of the world, and the power of modern technology to be able to speak to you now in Dunedin at the stadium. To be an Irish person, Quinny.
And there was a time, John, when I was down here on touring, and you wouldn't know anything about data roaming or anything, turning it off, and making phone calls back to Ireland. You'd have a fairly hefty bill when you get back home. But yeah, it's incredible. I just think that what happened here was just something special. It's only 15 minutes ago since the whistle went, and it's just hard to believe. And you have to take your hat off to Ireland, because their backs were to the wall, and we spoke about it yesterday, the pressure that they were facing. There was a trophy presentation set up here for New Zealand were anticipating winning the series. I don't kind of think they were getting cocky and ahead of themselves. They had to kind of prepare for that anyway. But the likelihood was they were going to get better from last week. I always thought Ireland would get better, but I just think the courage they showed, the tenacity, lots, and they're mentally strong. I'm just taking it for what it is now. It's incredible. No Irish team has ever done it here on New Zealand soil, and a lot of good players have played here over the years. I was on a couple of tours here, and I played in 02, didn't play in 06 or 08. We didn't get a win in those 3 tours that I was on, and a lot of great players have never got a chance to beat New Zealand here. We came close a few times. And 20 years ago in the old Carra's book, The House of Pain, that was a game that I thought we nearly won. We ended up losing 15-6. But look, there's been a few close ones. But I just thought the response from last week was incredible. And, they've got to get great credit for that. No matter what happens next week, I think, initially when I went down onto the field, you could kind of sense that they didn't want to get too excited because they want to try and go and win a series next week to back it up and get a win here. Well, that's a different kettle of fish. We'll talk about that during the week, but they deserve just huge credit for what they've done here tonight. And they quite the crowd, and they started the game absolutely brilliantly again.
A proud day for the players, the management staff, the coaching staff. Proud day for the country, Quinny. Great day for Irish sport. Our rugby coverage, as always, folks, thanks to Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team of us, everyone in. Let's unpack the game, Quinny, because like last week, we started brilliantly. Andrew Porter with a try in the very first few minutes.
Yeah, and that was the key. I think they had to get that self-belief and instill it in themselves again. I was at the couple of training sessions during the week, the captain's run. I said this to you, they looked like they were really up for this. And, I suppose the glass was half full last week. It wasn't one of those games, even though the scoreline was big. It was that period just before half-time last week. The game just got away from them. But I thought they responded incredibly well. And that has obviously helped them this week, because it's given them the belief that if they hold on to the ball and if they, execute well, that they can create problems for New Zealand. But collectively, they were just on the money tonight, right from the word go. I think if they had lost this game, you would certainly be in questioning the period where, at one stage, I think it was around 12 or 13 minutes that New Zealand were down to 13 men and Ireland didn't score. I think that, you were thinking, is that going to come back to bite them? But their line-out was so much better. Their scrum, they were the ones getting scrum penalties tonight. They were pinching a few line-outs. Their defence, they were forcing New Zealand into making mistakes. Some uncharacteristic errors, but a lot of that was down to the pressure that the Ireland players were putting on New Zealand players. And, they manned up physically, and I think they deserve great credit for that. Just an immense effort from everyone. And, at one stage, near the 65th minute, or was 60th or 65th minute, I'm not sure exactly. I'm just after jumping off commentary, but, Cian Healy's coming on, Finlay Bealham, Rob Herring is already on. Next scrum, they get a penalty for Ireland. So that's exactly what you want, is an impact from your bench. And Caelan Doris at one stage, a tap tackle in the second half. Big moment. But they created a lot of big moments tonight, John. And I just thought they were accurate. The lines are running, the passing. Sexton had a brilliant game as well, as had Gibson Park as well. When you win a game like this, you're going right across the board and you're saying, everyone contributed, and you have to get that type of level of performance from all your players to do the unthinkable, really, because nobody really deep down could back them and say, you'll guarantee a win here. It was I really thought, and a lot of people thought, we all thought that they would be better, but still thought it was a very, very tall order. But no matter what happens next week, as I said, we can't take this away from this group of players, and it'll do them the world of good in their build-up to the World Cup next year. And I loved Andy Farrell's attitude. Yesterday I keep hashing over this point. He said, I want to see if my players got the stomach for this. And I tell you one thing, they showed they had the stomach for it tonight, and they rode their luck a little bit. They got the bounce of the ball, but if you look at the energy and the intensity and watch back in the game, they were on it tonight, Ireland, and they just put so much pressure on New Zealand. Yeah. And they forced them into mistakes and errors. And then when they had the ball themselves, they were very decisive about what they wanted to do.
Yeah, Farrell after the game was brilliant because he was very grounded and he was already talking about winning the series. He wasn't popping the champagne corks. But you're going to New Zealand, Quinny, and then you got to face sometimes. Well, Jaco Piper obviously is an independent referee and he's a man of integrity, obviously. But there's a hometown aspect to it. Like Lester Fainga Anaku was only given a yellow he came off his feet like a wrestler and clattered into Mac Hansen. Then there was an opportunity for a penalty try, which Gary Ringrose was tackled without the ball, and we didn't get the penalty try. And that was even before the red card.
Yeah, look, I thought Fanga Nuku won. I thought that was a red card. It was reckless. He was flying through the air. And if you go back to Cape Town in 2016, you remember the CJ Stander one. Earlier in that game, Matthew Raynell gave him a red card for something similar. They mitigated it a little bit when they said there was some contact with the chest, but I thought Matt Cantona was right kind of below us in commentary. He received a very, very big blow into the face, and I thought it was a red card. It was a yellow. They had to dust themselves down. They kept going. They got another yellow and then a red after that as well, for the Angus Ta'avo
and
one.
You couldn't argue with the red, Quinny.
Ringos didn't come back. No, you couldn't argue with that one. I think you could. Even New Zealand commentary afterwards saying, look, and I just think I felt for Angus Ta'avo. I thought Fanga Nuku was reckless. And it was one of those ones where he's got to be much more careful in that. I think Gary Ringo steps back a little switch play. And Angus Ta'avo, there's no intent there. It's head on head, but he's much too high. And that's the way the modern game has gone. Your responsibility is the tackler. And it really damaged them. And in fairness, look, I thought I still was very, very nervous. And particularly with that Bowden Barrett try before halftime. But so I thought Ireland showed a lot of steel and resilience and composure to come out in the second half. They obviously dusted themselves down, and really kind of sorted what they wanted to do in the second half. And as I said to you a minute ago, James Ryan was in the bin, and they score a try with Porter again, and I think that just gave them a big, big lift. And I think Ireland will look back at certain opportunities that they had in the game, certain, couple of lineouts that went awry, a couple of penalties they gave away. I'm sure New Zealand will look at loads of stuff there, the knock-ons in particular, but it was a brilliant, brilliant performance, I think, and they were going right to the end. And I think if Sexton doesn't get the knock, he probably wants to stay on for the whole game, but the bench made a real big impact as well.
Yeah, and also just bizarre things happening where Savea was still on the pitch. They'd 15 on the pitch at one stage. Then New Zealand realised that actually Savea had to go off and there was their incorrect call. Then there's an argument as well that from an uncontested scrums point of view that they only should have had 12 players on the pitch. It just seems like the officiating was it was almost as undisciplined as New Zealand's performance.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that one and look back at it, John, because it's difficult when you're doing reactive kind of commentary. I don't know if they have to go down to 12. I need to check that. But I do think that when they had to bring on the prop for Tuingafasa was off, obviously, and then Angus Ta'avo gets sent off, so they've got to bring on another prop and they've got to take off a back rower. Artie Savi was the last back rower taken off when Tuingafasa came back on, and he had to stay off. So I think that was a mistake. I think if they had a choice, they would have taken off Sam Cane. Artie Savea is an incredible player, and so I think they made a mistake then. We need to check that afterwards. I think, can they go down to 12 players? But I need to clarify that. But the uncontested scrum, they 13 players in the field, and Ireland kind of knocked the ball on there with James Lowe, and they got a little bit lateral there, and you just think, God, they're making a lot of mistakes here now, and they're not kind of hammering that killer blow that they need to and get that score to take it to 17-0. But there was a lot of penalties against both sides. But I think Jaco Piper stayed pretty calm tonight. I think Ireland were frustrated last week with some of the decisions. That could turn on its head and be the opposite next week, and New Zealand could get some decisions. So it felt just crazy during that period of time, and particularly with Ireland not scoring when they had a lot of opportunities. The Gary Ringrose one, I don't think any was catching him. And it could have been a penalty try as well, but anyway, Ireland won't mind at this stage. They have that win and notched on their belts. And
and as maybe as sloppy as we were at times in the first half, Quinny, we were very, very controlled in that second half. Like, we dominated the second half.
Yeah, I think that was the key, the start after half time, and the way Ireland came out, they were very, very controlled. Their passing was very, very accurate. They look at some situations where they got turned over when they created. They got to multi-phase, and but look, you're not going to get anything easy from New Zealand. Sevu Reece had a couple of big turnovers, big tackles. I thought he was brilliant for them. Taking Bowden Barrett off as well was a strange one for me, because even if a guy like Bowden Barrett is having a bad game, he can come up with something brilliant So I think they'll be questioned. I think they're going to be under immense pressure, New Zealand now. Do they make changes? What do Ireland do? Can some of these players go again for the third week in a row, or will they make some changes? But it's, they've got the Murray game now on Tuesday night, so it'll certainly give the whole squad a huge, huge lift, and they can be very proud of it. I think, of course, I just wonder what the people who knock rugby in Ireland, I wonder what their excuses will be now. They'll come up with, New Zealand were tired. New Zealand had a red card. The referee wasn't good to New Zealand. I'm kind of waiting for all those ones now, John. But I'll tell you one thing. It was a pleasure to be here, do the commentary and be part of this. And in a very small way tonight, it was just a phenomenal win for Ireland against all the odds.
When you have wins like this, Quinny, everybody contributes. But Peter O'Mahony, there was a moment when he kicked the ball with the outside of the boot and it found touch, and they're going to make memes out of it. It was a mountainous performance from Peter O'Mahony this evening. Yeah,
it was. I thought Caelan Doris was brilliant, and Josh van der Fleer. As a unit, that back row worked incredibly hard. They were involved in a lot of big moments. I think at one stage there, you saw Peter O'Mahony making a low tackle. Josh van der Fleer joining in with him, stripping the ball from Tuanga Fassi from a carry from him. They're scrambling back. Jack Conan off the bench as well was incredible. So a little bit of noise in the background. Sorry,
okay,
they're taking down all the cables and the sound technicians here. But it was incredible. I just thought, Ty Burns, some of the carries, some of the runs, the tackles he made, and he found little pockets and holes in that all-black defence, and it was. Andrew Porter, a loose head prop, getting 2 tries. Sheehan was full of carries. Furlong, it was incredible. But the big moments in the game, you had exactly what you want as your back row involved in those moments. Stripping ball, winning turnovers, making carries, and as you say, Peter O'Mahony's kick, that kind of summed it up, didn't it?
Yeah, and also the knives are now out for Ian Foster. Sam Whitelock was missing today. New Zealand are the team now under pressure for this final test.
Yeah, they're under pressure, and the reaction here, and I think in New Zealand, will be immense. I think they'll get a lot of criticism. They don't take to losing. They don't lose too often here in New Zealand. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them now. And but look, when they look back in the game, there's lots of things went wrong for them and mistakes and errors. So similar to Ireland last week, I think they can fix some of those issues. But just to see the confidence and composure from Ireland was really impressive. They didn't panic at any stage, and they kept going, and they dealt with a lot of, I suppose, a lot of pressure this week in trying to find a performance, and they did. It's just incredible. It's incredible. It's still hard to believe, but Ian Foster is going to be under pressure, and there's going to be a lot of question marks now. But if they bounce back next week and beat Ireland well and win the series, he may ride out the storm.
Well, Andy Farrell, Paul O'Connell, all the coaching team, they know how to get the Ireland players' heads right. I think that's huge.
Yeah, but absolutely, I think. But there's enough of senior players in the squad as well, and I think they've probably spoken about it all week, and it's exactly the week you want your senior players to speak up and talk up and have positive vibes and positive kind of sound bites throughout the week. So I said it. And it's incredible, John. You sense these things a little bit. I didn't think Ireland would win. I'm not saying now that I said they'd win, but I said it to you yesterday on News Talk Breakfast that I really thought Ireland would be a lot better. And if they were in the game in the 50th, 60th minute, that they had a great chance of winning the game. I think the way it transpired with the red card and the yellow cards and stuff, it's big psychological blows for New Zealand, and Ireland capitalised. They had the confidence and the belief to come out in that second half and really play rugby and run brilliant lines and still come up with big defensive moments as well.
Would you like to see any difference in tactics or personnel for this the final test in Wellington? Look, like he's not going to want to change the team unless there's injuries. We'll have to see what happens with Sexton or Ringrose, but it'll probably be more of the same.
I don't know, John. I think it's too early now to think about it, to look at the squad and see. It depends how they front up. I think they'll want to go again, most of the players, and it depends on the bangs and knocks. is there an argument to start Joey Carberry now and put him out there? And or do they say we have to pick our best team because maybe we'll win a series, we want more? So it depends. And it depends on the injury, the knock that Sexton took. I think he'd have been frustrated, but I'm not sure there'll be many changes either way. I think it just depends on injuries. Do you go now after you're level in the series and win it and make some changes and really freshen things up? It depends. I think, they'll have to sit down and look at that. I'm not sure. Who do you bring in? Do you throw someone like Gavin Coombs in? Do you bring in Carberry? Do you put Jimmy O'Brien in the wing? I don't know. It's a tricky one. Tom O'Toole, does he come in for Furlong? Does Finlay Bealham start? There's a couple of things you can do, but I still think he'll want to go as strong as he can. There's an opportunity here, and I think it's going to be a special week for him, really. They won't want to let themselves down, but they'll know themselves. I guarantee you they're speaking in the dressing room after this game saying, keep our heads down now. We're going to get an angry reaction next week. So that's the challenge now, mentally and physically, how they prepare and how they deal with that challenge and reaction from New Zealand.
Whether we have the consistency to win the World Cup is questionable, Quinny, but on our day we can beat anybody, and we beat the All Blacks last November, we beat England at Twickenham, we've now won our first ever game on New Zealand soil. These victories accumulate and they give confidence and they infuse a belief in players.
It does, yeah. You look, the World Cup will still be a stick that'll be used to beat them until they get past the quarter-final, and that is fair enough. They've got to take that on the chin. If they get out of the group next year, they've South Africa and Scotland in there. Scotland are not going to roll over, but if they get out, they're either playing New Zealand or France in a quarter-final. So who knows? But victories like this will certainly grow their belief and strength and character and the resilience that they need. But you never know in sport. It's still going to be incredibly difficult. We've been at World Cups before where there's been an opportunity to play a team in a quarter-final that you'd fancy Ireland to win. It happened in 15 with Argentina. It happened in 11 with Wales. In 19 they were beaten by New Zealand. So it's going to be very difficult. But they can't take it away from the players. 4 times in the last 6 games, John. It's incredible. It was gone on for I think 111 years that we hadn't beaten them. And these players have done it 4 times. It's just incredible. So it's New Zealand spoke Ireland up last week, and they've backed up their talk now. Backed up that standing that they are a very good side, and on their day they can deliver. But the challenge is trying to keep the squad together, bring some through some more young players, and go to that World Cup next year with and deliver there. That's the challenge for them now. But look, that's 14 or 15 months away. I think they have to enjoy this now. You know what I mean? Somebody gave out to me already when I said, oh God, you got to think of next week now, get your heads right. One of the New Zealand cameraman crew that was working with us here, and he said, just enjoy tonight. It's an incredible win. And it kind of hit home that the players have to enjoy this. It's a very, very special moment. There's lots of great players. There's Lions teams that have come here, and lots of great teams over the years. And you think of England in 2003 when they won in Wellington, a test against New Zealand, and at one stage they had 13 players on the field. England, they won that series, they won that match in Wellington. I think of it, thinking back to that, I went to the World Cup in 2003. England went on and win a World Cup. I'm not saying we're going to go and win a World Cup, but that was a really important kind of part of that team's journey. And but I do think we need to find more younger players to come into this team and strengthen the bench and strengthen the player, even get more depth when you're not just 23 but up to 30 players, 35 players who can seamlessly transition into the team. But that's a challenge for Andy Farrell, and the Maori game on Tuesday night is an opportunity. I'm sure they're going to feel good about themselves and the whole squad, but I think the team that goes out against the Maoris now on Tuesday night in Wellington, they'll really want to get a performance, and that'll benefit the whole squad for the week. They were, well beaten in that first game, that first Maori game. So it's an opportunity for them. Yeah. And I think if we had in the Maori game, John, there probably would be wholesale changes and they'd throw caution to the wind. But there's a chance of winning a series now. And I just sense from Andy Farrell's body language after the game that's his mindset has gone straight onto that now.
You'll have to find the nearest party in Dunedin, Quinny.
We might have one tonight, John. Definitely, but I just think it's a lovely situation. There was some great support here in Dunedin tonight. Lots of people come in from Australia, loads of people over from Ireland as well, and it's phenomenal. So special night, John. A special night for sure, and we might have a little tipple later on.
Do, Quinny, enjoy it and chat during the week. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John. My pleasure.
Alan Quinlan there speaking live from Dunedin, where Ireland have won their first ever test in rugby on New Zealand soil, 23 points to 12 in Dunedin. Remember, our rugby coverage is thanks to Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in. After the break, we're going to speak to Fiona Coughlin, the former Grand Slam winning coach. Captain of Ireland. She could have been the coach. She could have done everything. She was such a great player. But we're going to speak to Fiona because we can't get enough of this. We're so excited that Ireland have won this historic victory in New Zealand for the first ever time. And the series now perfectly poised at one apiece ahead of that test in Wellington next week. So Ireland losing the first test in Auckland, winning the second test in Dunedin. It was very interesting to hear Johnny Sexton and Andy Farrell speaking after the game about how they were just looking ahead to the next test. It wasn't about celebrating. It wasn't about talking about past teams that came so close and we won the game. Look, I think they'll have a quiet beard this evening in the squad, but then they'll be on their way to Wellington, where we had that very painful defeat in the 2011 Rugby World Cup. But it's all about the next test now. The final test next Saturday, 8:05 Irish time is the start time for that. And we're going to have more rugby reaction with Fiona Coughlin on Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. It's back after the news, so don't go away. Stay listening to your radio. Thanks so much.
On Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.